Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why sometimes you feel like time is flying by and other times it seems to drag on forever, especially when you are trying to focus on something important like a task or just experiencing the world around you? Well, this new study might have a clue. And it turns out your sense of time is way more influenced by what is happening around that moment than you might think. Today we're diving into research that explores how the world of touch, not just what you feel directly, but also what is happening nearby in space and time, can mess with your perception of when things happen. Think of it like trying to pinpoint a specific musical note in a very busy orchestra. Does the sound of the violin next to it change how you hear that note? Does the rhythm of the drums before it affect your sense of timing for that note? Scientists are asking similar questions about touch. They wanted to know if little vibrations happening around a specific touch changed how precisely you could tell when that main touch occurred, and also when you perceived it to happen. The big idea here is that our senses don't work in isolation. What we see, hear, and feel is always happening within a context. Scientists have studied this a lot for vision, looking at how things around an object can change how we see that object. But for touch, it is a bit less understood. We touch things all day, and often we're touching with more than one finger, or our fingers are moving across a surface. All that information from different parts of your skin and different moments in time is being processed together. This research wanted to figure out if that surrounding tactile context makes it harder to be precise about timing, or if it actually shifts your perception of when a specific touch happened. They specifically looked at a task where people had to judge if a touch happened before or after a sound. So, how did they figure this out? They had 10 participants, and the main task was pretty clever. Imagine you feel a specific vibration on your middle finger, and at the same time you hear a little beep. Your job is to say if the vibration felt like it peaked before or after the beep. But here is the twist: they added other vibrations called flankers. To other fingers, these flankers were like distractions. They could change how many flankers there were, where they were on your hand, and importantly, when they happened relative to the main vibration on your middle finger. They could happen before, after, or even one before and one after. They used special machines that send tiny vibrations to your fingertips. And they made sure the vibrations were strong enough to feel but not so strong that they were painful or annoying. The researchers were basically setting up a little sensory experiment to see how easily participants could pinpoint the exact moment of the target vibration. They then looked at two main things. First, how precise was their timing? If they had to guess, how much doubt was there in their guess? This is like saying how sharp or blurry their sense of timing was. Second, they looked at perceived timing, which is like asking if the event felt like it happened a little bit earlier or a little bit later than it actually did. They used some fancy math models to analyze all the participants' answers, which helps them pick out the actual effects of the flankers from random noise. And what did they find? The first big discovery was about how the number of flankers affected timing precision. When they added more and more distraction vibrations to neighboring fingers, people got worse at telling exactly when the target vibration happened. It is like trying to hear that single musical note when the whole orchestra is playing louder and louder. The more surrounding sounds there are, the harder it is to isolate and precisely time that one note. This was true whether the flankers were on the same hand or even the opposite hand, which was a bit surprising and suggested that your brain might be processing touch information in a more connected way than just between directly next door fingers. Imagine your brain trying to make sense of all the touch signals at once. This graph here shows how their temporal precision estimate changed. See how as the number of flankers goes up, the bar gets lower. That means their ability to be precise about timing went down. They call this increased uncertainty. So, more distractions equal less certainty about the exact moment of a touch. This next part was really interesting. They found that a vibration on the opposite hand could mess with your timing precision almost as much as a vibration on a nearby finger. This is a big deal because it suggests that this noise in timing isn't just about small, local interactions between fingers that are right next to each other. Instead, it seems like your brain might be integrating touch information from both hands more broadly. It is not just about immediate neighbors. There is a more widespread influence. This points towards more central processing in the brain, not just simple side-by-side interactions on the skin. This figure shows that precision, temporal uncertainty, really took a hit with a contralateral flanker. But interestingly, the perceived timing didn't shift around much. This is a key distinction they found. Now here is where it gets even more nuanced. While the number of flankers affected how precise your timing was, the timing of those flankers relative to the target vibration had a different effect. If the surrounding vibrations happened before the target vibration, it made people feel like the target happened earlier than it actually did. Conversely, If the flankers happened after the target, it made people feel like the target happened later. It is like the surrounding touches were pulling your perception of the target's timing towards them. But what is super cool is that this shift in perceived timing didn't make people any less precise. Their ability to distinguish between very close moments in time stayed the same. It was just that their internal clock for that specific touch was nudged. Look at this graph. The accuracy, which is about precision, stays pretty much the same whether the flankers lead or lag, but the bias, shown as target-first responses, really shifts. When flankers lead, you get more target-first responses, meaning the target feels earlier. When flankers lag, you get fewer target-first responses, meaning the target feels later. And then they did something really clever. In one condition, they had one flanker vibration before the target and another flanker vibration after the target. This created a sense of apparent motion across the fingers. What they found was that the direction of this apparent motion actually mattered for the perceived timing. If the motion went from the index finger to the ring finger, it created one type of bias. If it went the other way, from ring to index, it created a different bias. This is mind-blowing because it suggests that even when the basic lead-lag influences are balanced, the brain also considers the sequential pattern of touch. Almost like it is creating a little movie of movement and judging time based on that movie. So what does this all mean? The researchers found two main ways that context messes with our sense of time and touch. First, the sheer amount of surrounding tactile noise, the number of extra vibrations, just degrades the sharpness of our temporal perception. It makes us less precise. This is like static on a radio signal, making it harder to clearly pick out the music. Second, the timing of that noise doesn't just add fuzziness, it actively shifts our perception of when the main event happened. If the context comes before, it tricks us into thinking the target was earlier. If it comes after, it tricks us into thinking it was later. They suggest two main ways the brain might be doing this. One is like a response competition where different signals fight it out. More flankers means more competition, so your judgment is less reliable. Another is like pooling, where all the signals are blended together before a decision. More signals blend into a blurrier sense of time. While the pattern of those signals shifts the average, it is possible both are happening. This research also reminds scientists of something called the flash lag effect in vision, where a moving object and the stationary flash appear to be misaligned in time. It seems our sense of time, even for touch, can be tricked by motion and context in similar ways across senses. The idea that the brain might be assigning time not just to the actual peak of a vibration, but to the perceived position of an illusory moving touch is a really exciting thought. The takeaway message here is pretty profound. Your sense of time, especially for touch, isn't a perfect isolated clock. It is deeply influenced by everything else happening around you. More surrounding touches make your timing less sharp, making it harder to pinpoint exact moments. The timing of those surrounding touches, however, can actively pull your perception forward or backward in time, not by making you less precise, but by shifting your subjective experience of when something occurred. And not only that, but the pattern of those surrounding touches, especially if they create a sense of motion, can further bias your sense of timing. It shows how dynamic and context-dependent our tactile world truly is. This is a really neat study because it separates out two different ways context influences us. It can make our timing more uncertain, or it can shift our perceived moment in time. And the fact that a contralateral touch can have such a significant effect suggests our brains are more integrated than we might intuitively think. It makes you wonder how these kinds of temporal illusions might play a role in everyday life. Maybe when we're reaching for something, or even just navigating a crowded space. Future research will likely explore how these findings apply to more complex naturalistic touch experiences, and maybe even how we can use this knowledge to improve technologies that rely on tactile feedback. So, that is it for this episode of RUBIN'S Mind Lab. What do you think about how your sense of time can be tricked by touch? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into the fascinating world of perception, please hit that like button, subscribe for more mind-bending science, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.